an absolutely stunning moment on CNN when CNN's Dana Bash had on former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to ask her about ceasefire protesters, in which Pelosi intimated that these ceasefire protesters are actually doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin. Here's what she had to say.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now, as you know.
You think some of these protests are Russian plants?
I don't say they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that. But apart from that, let's just say it's all spontaneous and sincere. Let's say it's all spontaneous and sincere. Young people care about the right to choose. They care about LGBTQ issues. They care about preserving the planet. They care about gun violence prevention. That's what they tell us. They care about our democracy and the freedoms that are contained in some of what I said. So they're going to have to make a decision.
Okay, there's a lot to go into there. First of all, it's pretty wild to say that they're Russian-backed. Second, though, notice immediately what she calls for. I want the FBI to investigate that. So this is like 1960s level calls. And what's crazy to me is that this is not an immediate like national scandal. I'm curious what you think, Krystal. I mean, I don't know if her brain is so broken that she can always just go back to Putin, but she genuinely does seem to believe this. Like Russiagate is so rotted her brain that, you know, the Russia is the first thing that she can reach for. FBI, you know, investigating Americans seems to be the second thing that she wants to reach for here. But I mean, this is truly stunning. This is one of the most powerful Democrats in the entire country.
I mean, she's certainly old enough to go back to those COINTELPRO days. True. So I guess she's just reaching back into her history from the old bag of tricks, but not that ever really fully stopped. No, it's stunning that this woman, who continues to be an incredibly powerful individual, one of the most powerful people in the country, would call for the FBI to investigate ceasefire protesters, the vast majority of whom, by the way, are the Democratic Party's base. I mean, the Democratic Party base is wildly at odds with where Biden and Pelosi are on this issue. I mean, among 2020 Biden voters, I think we may even have this. Yeah, 50% actually think that Israel is committing a genocide, and another 30% aren't too sure. So you got 80% of people who voted for Joe Biden who say, you know, either they are committing a genocide or they may be committing a genocide against Palestinian civilians. And Joe Biden obviously has backed them with that 110%, expediting the weapons shipments. So it is very rare to see an issue where the elites of the party are so dramatically at odds and directly antagonistic with their own voting base of support. So that's one thing I would say. In terms of where this comes from, I mean, I think that these Democrats, the top leadership, are so out of touch that they just can't fathom that young people actually genuinely, wildly disagree with their policy and are intelligent enough to have formulated their own opinions outside of the Democratic Party media propaganda machine, and they do not agree with what you're doing. And it didn't take Vladimir Putin or Russian financing or anything else for them to come to this position. It wasn't the TikTok algorithms. It's not because they're Russian plants. It's because they think you are aiding and abetting a genocide, and they got a little bit of a problem with that. The other thing that I would say, Saagar, that I found very noteworthy at the beginning of her comments, you probably took note of this as well, is that the first thing out of her mouth is like, yeah, they're outside of my house all the time. And I do think that's where some of the like personal animus and the rub comes from. Because it's at odds with her own self-conception. I think she sees herself as this like liberal feminist trailblazer. She thinks that young people should be yes queening her. And if they're not, it's not because of something she did or something the Democratic Party did. It must be some problem with them, or it must not be truly reflective of how they really feel about her or really feel about these policy issues. So what does she go for? She goes for, the easiest sugar high, the biggest source of derangement of the Democratic Party over the course of these past 8 years or so, the Russiagate conspiracy, to try to conceptualize how these young people could possibly disagree with her, liberal queen Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's just so much egotism behind the comments, but it also just reminds me of something that really was normalized under the Russiagate era, where you could just plausibly say that American citizens are committing treason and receive virtually no pushback. Even think about Dana Bash there. She's like, oh, you think that they're Russian-backed? It's not like, hold on a second, what single scrap of evidence do you have to back that up? And it goes back to, for example, Hillary Clinton accusing Tulsi Gabbard of being a Russian asset and all these things. These just became normalized such that it's like you are literally saying that people are committing treason or they are agents of foreign governments. These are prosecutable crimes. And then beyond the rhetoric of that, you're actually arguing for the FBI to immediately come in and step in to investigate said American citizens. This has been so normalized now from the Russiagate era and then extended during the whole January 6th investigation such that it extends to everybody. It's like a blanket security threat, really, from the top, where the former House Speaker, most powerful Democrat in the entire country, can just go on national television, and the host just doesn't even seem like she needs to follow up beyond just reiterating the claim just to make sure that she said it. I was actually more stunned by that, even more. Not just the comment, but by the casualness which was greeted by the CNN host. Who knows better?
So true.
She should know better than to just let that fly.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about no evidence, she loves to do this thing. And remember, Adam Schiff was like the king of doing this during the height of the Russiagate era, where he would intimate that he has some special knowledge about what's going on because he's been read in by the intel community, or he has some secret information that he can just hint at, but he can't really fully put out to the public. And she pulls that same trick here. She says like something to the effect of, well, I've been looking into this for a long time. And based on what I've seen, we need to investigate the financing. I'm going to ask for the FBI to investigate the financing. She offers nothing in the way of evidence or support. It's just an appeal to this potential secret knowledge that she may have, I guess, because the protesters show up at her house and it irritates her that, they disagree with her on this policy. The other thing that I just have to say is I find it so incredibly patronizing and deeply offensive when she says calling for a ceasefire is, quote, Mr. Putin's message. Because again, it takes all the agency away from the, by the way, overwhelming majority of Americans, not just Democrats, but Americans who want a ceasefire. Because in spite of all the media propaganda, they still see some of these images of children under the rubble and babies dying and getting bombed. And they say, this is horrible and I want it to stop. To think that that can only come from some sort of nefarious place, I just find it so deeply insulting and offensive that you could even formulate those words.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's a perfect transition, actually, to the Dearborn, Michigan mayor, Mr. Abdullah Hammoud, who's actually on standby waiting to join us. Let's get to it.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.